The stars had always called to humanity. For thousands of years, they looked up at the night sky and wondered if they were alone. In 2247, they finally got their answer. The massive space station hung in the darkness like a jewel made of metal and light. It was called Concordat Prime, and it was home to the Galactic Concordat. Inside its halls, representatives from 200 different species worked together, traded together, and lived together in peace. They had been doing this for over 10,000 years. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood in the docking bay of Earth's first interstellar ship, the Pathfinder. Her hands were shaking, but not from fear. She was excited. Humanity was about to join something bigger than themselves. They were about to become part of the galactic family. The doors opened with a soft hiss. Beyond them waited a crowd of alien beings. Some had scales, some had fur, and some had skin that glowed with soft colors. Sarah took a deep breath and stepped forward with her team of 12 other humans. The reception was polite but cold. The aliens studied the humans like scientists studying insects. A tall being with 4 arms and purple skin approached Sarah. Its name was Ambassador Kelrix, and it represented the Concordat Council. "Welcome to Concordat Prime," Kelrix said through a translation device. "We have reviewed your species application. You come from what we call a death world. Your planet is unusually dangerous, and yet you survived." "This is impressive," Sarah smiled. "Thank you. We're eager to learn from the Concordat and share what we know." Kelrix's face showed something that might have been amusement. "Share what you know. Ambassador Chen, your species has only just discovered faster-than-light travel. You have much to learn, but little to teach. However, we welcome you as observers. In perhaps a few hundred years, you may qualify for full membership." The words stung, but Sarah kept her smile. This was just the beginning. They would prove themselves. Over the next 3 months, humanity tried to establish relationships with the Concordat species. Some were friendly. Most were dismissive. The humans learned quickly that the galaxy saw them as primitive and weak. Yes, they came from a dangerous planet. Yes, they had survived when they should have died. But that just made them lucky, not strong. Then the Vraxian Dominion learned about Earth. The Vraxians were different from most Concordat species. They were conquerors who had been allowed to join because they promised to stop their wars of expansion. They controlled 40 star systems and had the most powerful military in the galaxy. Their bodies were covered in thick armor-like skin. They stood 8 feet tall. They had never lost a war. Emperor Vrex studied the reports about Earth with great interest. The planet was rich in rare minerals. The solar system had valuable resources. And best of all, the humans were weak. Their ships were slow. Their weapons were primitive. Their military was scattered across their tiny system. "It would be foolish not to take what is clearly ours for the claiming," Vrex told his war council. "The Concordat's rules say we cannot attack member species. But the humans are only observers. They have no protection under galactic law." His generals agreed. A fleet of 200 warships began the journey to Earth. The humans on Concordat Prime tried to warn them. Sarah Chen requested an emergency meeting with the council. "The Vraxians are planning to attack Earth," she said, her voice urgent. "We've intercepted their communications. Please, you must help us." The council members looked at each other. One of them, a being that looked like a floating jellyfish, spoke. "Ambassador Chen, the Vraxians are aggressive, yes, but they are not fools. If they attack you, you must defend yourselves." "With what?" Sarah nearly shouted. "We have 12 defense platforms and 40 ships scattered across our colonies. They have 200 warships. We need help." Kelrix spoke gently, as if explaining something to a child. "Your species has a violent history. We have studied your databases. You have fought thousands of wars among yourselves. Surely you can defend against one fleet?" Sarah felt her blood turn cold. "You don't understand. Those wars were against other humans. We've never fought aliens with advanced technology, please." But the council dismissed her concerns. The Concordat had rules about interfering in conflicts between non-member species. They would observe and offer to mediate, but they would not intervene. 3 weeks later, the Vraxian fleet arrived at Proxima Colony, humanity's furthest settlement. 5,000 people lived there in biodomes on a rocky moon. They were farmers, miners, and families who wanted a fresh start. The Vraxians did not offer terms. They did not ask for surrender. They simply opened fire from orbit. The defense platforms lasted 4 minutes. The colony's emergency shelters were built to protect against meteor strikes, not military-grade plasma weapons. The bombardment lasted 2 hours. When it was over, Proxima Colony was gone. 5,000 people were dead. The Vraxians broadcasted a message to Earth. You have 30 days to surrender your system. Refuse and we will turn Earth into ash. You cannot win. You are weak. Accept your fate, and we will allow your species to live as workers in our empire. The message reached Earth 12 hours later. The response from humanity's leaders was broadcast across every frequency. No. The Vraxian commanders were confused. Perhaps the humans did not understand their situation. They destroyed 2 more small outposts, killing another 3 million people in orbital bombardments. Surely now the humans would see reason. Instead, something changed on Earth. Every nation, every government, every group that had ever fought each other suddenly stopped. Ancient enemies shook hands. Religious differences were set aside. Political rivals worked together. For the first time in human history, the entire species united with a single purpose. The concordant observers watched from their monitoring stations. They expected to see panic. They expected to see surrender negotiations. Instead, they saw something that confused them. Earth's factories changed overnight. Car manufacturers started producing armored vehicles. Civilian shipyards began constructing warships. Research facilities that had been working on medical advances switched to weapons development. Even the entertainment industry started producing propaganda to boost morale. One concordant observer, a being named Tella, who had actually liked the humans, sent a worried report to her superiors. They're not behaving like a species about to surrender. They're behaving like a species preparing for total war. I don't think we understand what we're watching. Her superiors dismissed the report. Humans were emotional and irrational. This was just their way of processing fear. When the Vraxian fleet arrived at Earth in 30 days, the humans would see their situation clearly and surrender. But on Earth, in military headquarters around the world, human generals were making plans. They pulled up thousands of years of warfare history. They studied every battle, every strategy, every tactic that had ever worked. They knew they were outgunned. They knew they were outnumbered. They knew that by every logical measure, they should lose. But humanity had never been very good at accepting what they should do. Admiral James Morrison stood in the command center of the newly constructed warship Defiance. Around him, officers worked at their stations with grim determination. On the main screen, he could see Earth beautiful and blue and threatened. We have 28 days, he said to his crew. In that time, we're going to build an army. We're going to prepare for a war, and we're going to show these bastards what happens when you attack Earth. He paused, then added words that would become famous across the galaxy. They think we're weak because we're new to the stars. They're about to learn that we're new to the stars because we've been too busy perfecting the art of war on our own world. Let's teach them what humanity does best. The crew responded with a single word that echoed through the ship. Sir, yes, sir. The countdown had begun. The Vraxian fleet expected panic. They expected desperate pleas for mercy. They expected surrender. What they got instead was silence. 28 days after their ultimatum, the Vraxian armada entered Earth's solar system. Emperor Vrex himself commanded the flagship, a massive vessel called the Eternal Conqueror. He had come to witness humanity's defeat personally. It would be a message to the rest of the galaxy. Even the aggressive Deathworlders would bow to Vraxian power. The fleet's sensors immediately detected the human ships waiting for them. Vrex laughed when he saw the numbers. Humans had managed to build 40 new ships to add to their existing fleet. Against 200 Vraxian warships, it was pathetic. Open a channel, Vrex commanded. Let me speak to whoever leads these fools. Admiral Morrison's face appeared on the screen. He looked tired, but his eyes were hard as steel. This is your last chance, Vrex said. Surrender now and your species will serve us. Fight and we will exterminate every last one of you. Morrison was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled, and it was not a pleasant smile. Emperor Vrex, in the last month, humanity has done something we should have done long ago. We stopped fighting each other and remembered who we really are. You wanted to see what Deathworlders can do? Let me show you. The channel cut off. Vrex felt a moment of confusion, then his tactical officer shouted a warning. Sir, we're detecting weapons launches from Earth, from Mars, from the asteroid belt. Thousands of missiles. The Vraxian fleet's defensive systems activated. Their point defense weapons destroyed most of the missiles easily, but there were so many. A few got through. When they hit, They didn't carry the plasma warheads the Vraxians expected. They carried something else, nuclear weapons. The tactical officer screamed. They're using atomic weapons. The concordant observers watching from a safe distance were shocked. Nuclear weapons were considered barbaric. Most species had banned them thousands of years ago after learning about the radiation danger. But humanity had kept them, improved them, and now used them without hesitation. 3 Vraxian ships were destroyed in the first wave. It was barely a dent in their fleet, but it sent a message. Humans would use any weapon they had. The battle began in earnest. The Vraxian ships advanced, their plasma cannons tearing through human vessels. For every Vraxian ship that fell, 5 human ships were destroyed. The math was simple and brutal. Humanity was losing, but they kept fighting. A human frigate called the Remembrance was hit by plasma fire. Its engines were dead, its weapons destroyed, but its life support was still working. The captain made a decision that would shock the watching galaxy. He aimed his dying ship at a Vraxian cruiser and pushed the emergency thrusters to maximum. The collision destroyed both ships. They're ramming us, a Vraxian commander reported. These creatures are using their ships as weapons. It wasn't just one ship. When human vessels were too damaged to fight, they became missiles. Captains aimed at the enemy and accelerated. Across the battlefield, humans traded their lives for Vraxian ships in what the concordant observers could only describe as organized suicide attacks. Emperor Vrex felt something he hadn't experienced in decades: uncertainty. His fleet was winning, yes, but humans were fighting in ways that defied all logic. They accepted casualties that would have broken any other species' morale. Then the second wave hit. From Earth's surface, from hidden bunkers on Mars, from secret bases in the asteroid belt, humanity revealed something the galaxy had never imagined. They had converted civilian ships into carriers. Thousands of small attack craft poured out, piloted by humans who knew they probably wouldn't survive but launched anyway. These craft were fast and hard to target. They swarmed the Vraxian ships like angry insects. Each one carried a payload of conventional explosives. Individually, they couldn't hurt the armored Vraxian vessels. But hundreds of them attacking the same target, that was different. A Vraxian battleship was swarmed by 200 human fighters. They crashed into it again and again, targeting the same weak point in its armor. The ship's defenses killed most of them, but enough got through. The battleship's hull breached and it began to break apart. The human losses were staggering. For every Vraxian ship destroyed, humanity lost hundreds of fighters and dozens of larger vessels. But they had numbers the Vraxians hadn't expected. Earth's entire industrial capacity had been converted to war production. Every factory, every shipyard, every resource had been directed toward one goal: building weapons. In just 28 days, humanity had armed itself for total war. The concordant observers were sending constant updates back to their governments. This wasn't how civilized species fought. This was something else. One observer, Tella, watched a human pilot deliberately crash his damaged fighter into a Vraxian ship's engine. Before impact, the pilot transmitted a message on an open channel. "Remember Earth." Those 2 words became a battle cry. Every human ship, every pilot, every soldier repeated it. Remember Earth, remember the colonies. Remember the 3 million who died. The Vraxians began to feel something they thought was impossible: fear. Emperor Vrex's fleet had been reduced to 140 ships. He had lost 60 vessels in a battle he was supposed to win easily. His tactical officers were reporting strange behavior from the enemy. "Sir, a damaged human frigate just ejected its crew in escape pods, then accelerated toward our line under computer control. It's going to ram us." "Destroy it." "We're trying, sir." There are 12 more doing the same thing. The battle raged for 2 days. When it finally ended, the Vraxians held the field. But they had paid a terrible price. 70 Vraxian warships remained out of 200. The human fleet was destroyed, but Earth's planetary defenses were still intact. Vrex stared at the planet below. His generals were advising caution. They had won the space battle, but the humans had fighting spirit that defied understanding. Invading the planet itself would be even more costly. Then the reports started coming in. Human commando teams had infiltrated 3 Vraxian ships during the battle using boarding pods. They had sabotaged the ships from the inside, killing themselves in the process but taking the vessels with them. One Vraxian captain had been found dead in his command chair with a human combat knife in his chest. The human soldier had somehow fought through an entire ship's crew to reach the bridge. Security footage showed the soldier taking lethal wounds but continuing to fight until the captain was dead. Only then did the human finally collapse. Rex watched the footage with growing horror. He had fought many wars. He had conquered dozens of worlds, but he had never seen anything like this. These humans fought like they welcomed death, as long as they could take the enemy with them. A communication came from the planet below. It was Admiral Morrison broadcasting from Earth's military command center. Emperor Rex, you've won the battle in space. Congratulations. But you haven't won the war. You can bombard Earth from orbit, but we've built shelters deep underground. You can invade, but we'll fight you in every city, every building, every room. We have 7 billion people on this planet, and every single one of them will fight. You'll win eventually, but how many of your soldiers are you willing to lose? 1 million? 10 million? How much is Earth worth to you? Morrison leaned forward, his face filling the screen. Or you can leave now. Go back to your empire. Tell them you decided Earth wasn't worth the cost. We'll give you that option once. Only once. Rex felt rage boiling inside him. How dare this primitive creature offer him terms? But he looked at his fleet, reduced by 2/3. He thought about the soldiers he would need to invade Earth and the casualties he would take. This isn't over, Rex said. We will return with 10 fleets. We will bring enough ships to block out your sun. You have won nothing but a delay. Then we'll kill you when you come back, Morrison replied simply. We're not going anywhere. The Vraxian fleet withdrew. Across Earth, humans celebrated, but their leaders knew the truth. They had won a battle, not the war. The Vraxians would return, and humanity needed to be ready. The concordant observers sent their final reports. Every government in the galaxy read them with growing concern. One phrase appeared in every report, written by different observers in different languages but meaning the same thing. Humanity fights with a totality we have never witnessed. They accept casualties that would break any other species. They use tactics we consider barbaric. If the Vraxians return, this war will become something the galaxy has never seen. We strongly recommend the Concordat prepare for refugees and humanitarian aid. This conflict will not end quickly, and it will not end cleanly. On Earth, Admiral Morrison stood before the combined military leadership of every human nation. They had fought off one fleet, but he knew what came next. They'll be back, he said, probably within 6 months. We need to be ready, not just to defend, but to attack. We can't win by sitting here waiting for them. We need to take this war to their territory. One general asked the question everyone was thinking. How we barely survived one battle. They'll bring 10 times as many ships next time. Morrison pulled up a holographic display showing the Vraxian Empire and their supply lines. Then we don't fight them fleet to fleet. We fight them the way we've fought each other for thousands of years. We use guerrilla tactics, sabotage, and psychological warfare. We make them afraid to sleep. We turn their own empire against 8 months had passed since the first battle. The Vraxians returned as promised, but not with 10 fleets. They brought 5, thinking it would be enough. They were wrong about many things. The war had changed. Humanity had changed. The Vraxian forces swept through the outer colonies, recapturing the territories they had lost. But something was different this time. The human colonists fought with desperate fury, but when defeat was certain, they destroyed everything. Farms were burned, mines were collapsed, water purification systems were sabotaged. The Vraxians conquered empty ruins instead of valuable resources. Then they found the bodies. In a captured colony on Kepler Station, Vraxian soldiers discovered the remains of human prisoners from the first wave of attacks. They had been tortured, experimented on, and left to die in cages. The Vraxian commanders had allowed this, seeing humans as beneath their concern. The footage was transmitted back to Earth. Admiral Morrison watched it with the other military leaders. The room was silent except for the sound of the recording. When it finished, Morrison's hands were shaking, but his voice was steady. No more prisoners, he said. From this moment forward, we show the Vraxians exactly the same mercy they showed our people. None. No one disagreed. The order went out to every human ship, every military unit, every soldier. The concordant observers monitoring human communications were horrified. This violated every rule of civilized warfare. They sent urgent messages to Earth begging the humans to reconsider. Morrison's response was broadcast across all frequencies so everyone could hear it. You want us to follow the rules of war? Where were those rules when the Vraxians killed 3 million of our people without warning? Where were those rules when they tortured our prisoners? The Concordat had a chance to help us to stop this before it started. You chose to do nothing. Now you'll watch what happens when you leave Deathworlders to fight alone." The Concordat had no response. The war entered a new phase. Human ships no longer tried to capture Vraxian vessels. They destroyed them completely, making sure there were no survivors. When humans retook occupied colonies, they executed every Vraxian soldier they found. The galaxy watched in horror as humanity embraced total war. But the humans weren't just fighting in space. They were fighting everywhere. Commander Sarah Reeves led a team of 50 Special Forces soldiers on a mission deep into Vraxian territory. They traveled in a stolen Vraxian cargo ship, using forged credentials to pass through checkpoints. Their target was Vraxis Prime, the species' homeworld. They weren't there to fight an army. They were there to do something much worse. The team split up across the planet's capital city. Over 3 days, they planted devices in the city's infrastructure. Its water treatment plants, its power grid, its communication hubs. They moved like ghosts, killing silently when necessary, hiding when possible. On the 4th day, they activated everything at once. The capital went dark. Water systems failed. Communication networks crashed. In the chaos, the humans extracted themselves and escaped on a civilian transport. By the time Vraxian security figured out what happened, Reeves and her team were gone. But the damage was done. The citizens of Vraxis Prime rioted when they learned that humans had penetrated their defenses and attacked their homeworld. How could their mighty military let this happen? The Vraxian government tried to suppress the information, but it leaked. Across the Empire, people began to question whether this war was worth the cost. Humanity didn't stop there. They sent teams to a dozen Vraxian worlds. Some missions succeeded, some failed, but the message was clear. Nowhere was safe. Humans could strike anywhere, anytime. The psychological warfare was just as brutal as the physical fighting. Humanity created a weapon that the galaxy had never seen before. They called them von Neumann swarms, self-replicating machines that could build copies of themselves using raw materials they found. Humans launched thousands of these into Vraxian space with one instruction: reproduce and destroy military targets. The swarms started small, but they grew. They consumed asteroids and turned them into more machines. They attacked Vraxian supply ships, space stations, and military outposts. The Vraxians couldn't destroy them all because each machine they killed was replaced by 2 more. Within 3 months, the swarms were causing chaos throughout the Vraxian Empire. Supply lines were disrupted. Military production slowed. The Vraxians had to dedicate entire fleets just to hunting down these machines. The Concordat was appalled. They sent delegations to Earth, begging humanity to stop using such weapons. Self-replicating machines were banned under galactic law because they could potentially consume entire solar systems if they malfunctioned. "Then maybe you should have made rules against surprise attacks too," Morrison told them. "We're fighting with everything we have. If you don't like it, help us end this war faster." The Concordat refused to take sides. They could only watch as the war grew more terrible. The turning point came at the Battle of Vraxian Outpost 7. The outpost controlled a strategic star system on the edge of Vraxian space. Capturing it would give humanity a foothold in enemy territory. The problem was that 5,000 Vraxian soldiers defended it, along with their families. The outpost wasn't just military, it was a colony with 20,000 civilians. Admiral Lisa Park commanded the human fleet that arrived at the system. She sent a message to the outpost commander offering terms. "Surrender the military base and we'll evacuate the civilians safely to Concordat space. Refuse and we'll take it by force." The Vraxian commander refused. His honor wouldn't allow surrender to primitives. Admiral Park gave him 24 hours to reconsider. When the deadline passed and the answer was still no, she gave an order that would haunt her for the rest of her life. Begin bombardment. Target the military sections first, but if they use civilians as shields, continue firing anyway. The battle lasted 6 hours. The Vraxian defenders were brave but doomed. When it was over, the military base was destroyed. So were the civilian sections. The Vraxians had indeed used their own people as shields, hoping humanity would hesitate. They were wrong. Park transmitted footage of the aftermath back to Vraxian space, along with a message. "This is what happens when you refuse to surrender. This is what happens when you hide behind your civilians. We gave you a chance to save them. You chose their deaths, not us. Every soldier who dies from this point forward, every civilian who suffers, that's on your leaders, not ours." The footage showed the destroyed outpost and the bodies of those who had refused to evacuate. It was brutal and honest and terrible. The Vraxians tried to use it as propaganda to show human cruelty. Instead, it had the opposite effect. Vraxian soldiers started surrendering. Not in large numbers at first, but enough to matter. They had families too. They had homes. And they were beginning to realize that their leaders were willing to sacrifice them for a war they couldn't win. Emperor Vrex was furious. He ordered his generals to execute any soldier who surrendered. This only made things worse. Now Vraxian soldiers were trapped between an enemy that showed no mercy and leaders who would kill them for giving up. The war had become a nightmare for both sides. Humanity had lost over 800 million people. Every family on Earth had lost someone. The colonies were in ruins. The economy was completely focused on war production. Children grew up learning about weapons instead of art. The entire species had been traumatized, but they kept fighting. The Concordat tried one more time to broker peace. They brought both sides to a neutral station for negotiations. Admiral Morrison represented humanity. General Krall represented the Vraxians. The negotiations lasted exactly 10 minutes. Unconditional surrender, Morrison said. Your military is disbanded. Your emperor steps down. Vraxian space is divided into protectorates monitored by neutral parties. Those are our terms. Krall slammed his 4 fists on the table. Never. The Vraxian Dominion will never surrender to primitives. We would rather die as a species than bow to you. Morrison stood up slowly. He looked tired, so tired, but his eyes were hard. Then die. He walked out. The negotiations were over. The Concordat observers realized something terrible. Both sides were willing to fight to extinction. Humanity had passed some kind of threshold. They had suffered too much, lost too much to stop now, and the Vraxians were too proud to admit defeat. This war was going to end in genocide. The only question was which species would survive. Tella, the Concordat observer who had first warned about humanity, sent a message to her government that became famous across the galaxy. We misunderstood the term Deathworlder. We thought it meant they came from a dangerous planet. We were wrong. It means they are death itself. When you threaten their home, when you kill their people, they don't just fight back. They embrace total war with a completeness that civilized species cannot match. They will use any weapon, accept any loss, commit any act to achieve victory. We have awakened something terrible, and I fear the galaxy will never be the same. The war continued. The brutality escalated, and somewhere in the darkness of space, humanity prepared for the final phase of the conflict. The PH. 18 months into the war, the impossible was happening. The Vraxian Dominion, the empire that had never lost a war in 3,000 years, was in full retreat. Human fleets pushed deeper into Vraxian space every day. They used the tactics they had perfected over centuries of warfare against each other. They split their forces to attack multiple targets. They used deception, making the enemy think attacks were coming from one direction while striking from another. They learned and adapted faster than any species the Vraxians had ever fought, but that wasn't what terrified the watching galaxy. It was the fact that humanity kept going. The Vraxians had been pushed back to their core territories. They offered peace terms, offering to return everything they had taken and pay reparations. Admiral Morrison rejected the offer without even bringing it to Earth's government. They started this war without terms, he said in a broadcast that reached every corner of the galaxy. They killed our people without mercy. They showed us what they were capable of. Now we're showing them what we're capable of. This war ends when we say it ends, not when they decide they've had enough. The Concordat sent an emergency delegation to meet with human leadership. Ambassador Kelrix, who had dismissed humanity as primitive just 2 years ago, now stood before a council of human military leaders and politicians. Begging them to stop. You've won, Kelrix said. His forearms spread in a gesture of pleading. The Vraxians are defeated. They're offering surrender. Please end this before more lives are lost. President Maria Santos looked at the alien ambassador with cold eyes. She had lost her son in the first battle. Her daughter had died defending Mars. The war had taken everything from her except her duty. They're not offering surrender, Santos said. They're offering to stop fighting and keep most of what they have. That's not good enough. The Vraxian military needs to be completely destroyed. They need to be unable to ever threaten anyone again. That's the only acceptable end to this war. But that will require invading their core worlds, Kelrix protested. Billions will die. You're talking about casualties on a scale the galaxy hasn't seen in 10,000 years. Then maybe they should have thought about that before they attacked Earth. The delegation left with nothing. The war continued. Humanity made an announcement that shocked the galaxy. They were going to invade 3 Vraxian homeworlds simultaneously. These weren't just military targets. These were the heart of the Vraxian Empire, planets with billions of civilians. The Concordat tried to organize a coalition to stop the humans by force if necessary. But when they looked at what humanity had done to the Vraxians, no one wanted to fight them. Species that had been aggressive before suddenly became very peaceful. They remembered the footage of human tactics, the willingness to sacrifice everything, the totality of their warfare. The invasions began. The first world was Vraxia Secundus, home to 4 billion Vraxians and their largest military production facilities. Human forces bombarded the planet from orbit for 3 days straight, not with precision strikes on military targets, but with sustained bombardment designed to destroy everything. The Vraxian defenders fought desperately, but they were overwhelmed. Human soldiers who landed on the planet showed the same determination they had shown since the war began. They fought building to building, room to room. When they encountered resistance, they didn't try to minimize civilian casualties. They used whatever force was necessary to advance. A young human soldier named Marcus Webb was interviewed by a Concordat journalist who had embedded with human forces against Morrison's advice. The journalist, a being named Silex, asked him how he could live with the destruction they were causing. Webb looked at him with empty eyes. "I had a family on Proxima Colony, a wife and 2 kids. They were the first ones the Vraxians killed. You want to know how I live with this? Easy. Every Vraxian that dies is justice for them. I'll do this until every last one of them is gone if that's what it takes." Silex broadcast the interview. It went viral across the galaxy. People realized this wasn't just about military strategy anymore. Humanity had become consumed by revenge. Every soldier had lost someone. Every civilian on Earth had buried friends or family. The entire species had been traumatized, and they were channeling that trauma into destruction. The second invasion target was Vraxia Tertius, a heavily fortified military world with 2 billion residents. The human attack was expected, and the Vraxians were ready. They had prepared defenses, dug in for a long siege, and were ready to make the humans pay for every meter of ground. But humanity didn't invade. Instead, Admiral Chan made a different decision. She positioned her fleet in orbit and gave the order that would make her name a curse word across half the galaxy. Prepare. The stellar bomb. The stellar bomb was humanity's most terrible weapon. It was a massive fusion device designed to destabilize a planet's magnetic field and expose it to solar radiation. It wouldn't destroy the planet instantly. It would make it slowly uninhabitable over the course of months as radiation poisoned everything. The Concordat screamed in protest. Using such a weapon was a war crime by every definition of galactic law. It was genocide. It was unthinkable. Chen's response was broadcast across all frequencies. The Vraxians made it unthinkable. They wanted total war. They're getting it. The bomb was deployed. Vraxia Tertius began to die. The Vraxian defenders realized what was happening. They couldn't stop it. They couldn't fix it. Their world was doomed. They had 2 choices: evacuate or die with their planet. Most tried to evacuate. Human forces let the civilian ships through but destroyed every military vessel that tried to leave. The message was clear. Civilians could run, but soldiers had to pay the price. Over the next 6 months, 2 billion Vraxians fled their dying world. They scattered across the galaxy, refugees with nowhere to go. The Concordat tried to help them, but the numbers were overwhelming. Refugee camps appeared on dozens of worlds, full of Vraxians who had lost everything. The third invasion never happened because the Vraxian Emperor finally broke. Emperor Vrex sent a message directly to humanity. It wasn't broadcast publicly. It was a private communication to Admiral Morrison, and Morrison chose to share it. In the message, Vrex was barely recognizable. The proud emperor who had started this war was gone. In his place was a broken old being who looked like he hadn't slept in months. "Please," Vrex begged. "Please stop. We surrender. Unconditional surrender. Take our military. Take our weapons. Take our throne. Just please stop killing my people." Morrison watched the message 3 times before responding. When he did, his response was simple. No. The galaxy collectively gasped. The Vraxians were offering everything, and humanity still said no. What more could they possibly want? Morrison explained in a broadcast that would become one of the most infamous speeches in galactic history. The Vraxian people need to understand something. They followed their emperor into a war of aggression. They supported the attack on Earth. They celebrated when their military killed our people. This isn't just about their military or their government. This is about an entire species that thought it was acceptable to commit genocide against us. So no, we don't accept their surrender. We're going to continue this war until the Vraxian people truly understand what they've done. Human forces arrived at Vraxis Prime, the Vraxian throne world, home to 8 billion Vraxians, the capital of their empire, the seat of their civilization, and humanity laid siege to it. They didn't invade. They didn't bombard. They simply surrounded the planet and waited. No ships in, no ships out. No supplies, no food shipments, no medicine. The planet had enough resources to feed itself for about 3 months. After that, people would start starving. The Concordat tried everything to break the siege. They sent humanitarian ships. Human forces turned them away. They tried diplomatic pressure. Humanity ignored it. They threatened sanctions. Humanity laughed. Sanction us for what? President Santos asked. We're already isolated. We're already fighting alone. Your threats mean nothing. The siege continued. Inside Vraxis Prime, desperation grew. The government rationed food, but it wasn't enough. People began to starve. Protests turned into riots. Riots turned into civil war as different factions fought over remaining resources. Emperor Vrex killed himself in the 3rd month. His final message was broadcast across the planet. I'm sorry. I started this war out of arrogance and pride. I thought humans were weak. I was wrong. I condemn my people to this fate. I don't deserve to live while they suffer. Forgive me, his death changed nothing. The siege continued. By the 6th month, 4 billion Vraxians had died of starvation and disease. The surviving 4 billion were too weak to do anything but wait for death. Then humanity offered terms. Admiral Morrison himself delivered them via broadcast. To the dying planet below. Unconditional surrender. Your military is permanently disbanded. Every weapon you have is destroyed. Your species is limited to 1 planet under Concordat supervision. Any Vraxian caught building military technology will be executed. These terms are not negotiable. Accept them and we'll send food and medicine. Refuse and we'll wait until every last one of you is dead. The Vraxian government, what was left of it, accepted immediately. Human ships began delivering supplies. Medical teams landed to help the sick. Engineers worked to restore infrastructure. But there were conditions. Vraxian soldiers who had participated. 3 years after the Vraxian surrender, the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The Vraxian species survived, but barely. Their population had been reduced from 40 billion across 40 worlds to just under 4 billion on a single planet. They were forbidden from having a military. Their technology was monitored. A generation of children was growing up knowing that their species had been broken by a race they had called primitive. But it was humanity that had changed the most. Ambassador Sarah. Chen walked through the halls of Concordat Prime once again. 3 years ago, she had begged these people for help. Now when she entered a room, conversations stopped. Aliens looked away or found excuses to leave. She was treated with the kind of careful politeness usually reserved for dangerous predators. The Concordat had formally invited humanity to join as full members. Not observers, not probationary members, but full voting members with all rights and privileges. The vote had been unanimous. No species had dared to vote against it. Chen sat in her first full council meeting and watched as the representatives discussed trade disputes and border disagreements. When it came time for humanity to speak on an issue regarding shipping routes, she stood. The room fell silent. 200 species waited to hear what she would say. Humanity supports the proposed trade route adjustment, Chen said simply. We believe it's fair to all parties involved. There was a pause, then rapid agreement from every other species. The measure passed without any debate. Chen sat down feeling slightly sick. They hadn't agreed because her argument was good. They had agreed because they were afraid to disagree with humanity. This was what victory looked like. On Earth, things were complicated. The planet had survived the war, but it bore scars that would take generations to heal. Monuments covered the landscape. memorials to the 800 million humans who had died. Every city had a wall with names carved into it. So many names. Admiral Morrison stood in front of one such wall in Washington. His hands traced the letters of his daughter's name. She had been a pilot, killed in the second month of the war when her fighter was shot down over Mars. She was 23 years old. Was it worth it? A voice asked behind him. Morrison turned to see President Santos. She looked older than her years. The war had aged everyone who lived through it. I don't know, Morrison admitted. We won, we're safe. No one will threaten us again. But the cost, he trailed off, looking back at the wall of names. Santos joined him, finding her own children's names among the millions. I have nightmares, she said quietly, about the siege, about Vraxis Prime. I see the footage from the refugee camps, the starving children, the bodies, and I know we did that. I gave the orders. You carried them out. We broke an entire species. They started it, Morrison said, but his voice lacked conviction. They did, Santos agreed, and we finished it in a way that will haunt us forever. The galaxy is afraid of us now. Not respectful, not admiring, afraid. Is that what we wanted? Neither of them had an answer. In schools across Earth, children learned a different kind of history now. The curriculum included detailed lessons about the war, about what humanity had done, about the terrible weapons they had used and the billions who had died. Teachers struggled to explain to young students why their parents had made the choices they made. A teacher named David Park stood in front of his class of 10-year-olds. They had just finished learning about the siege of Vraxis Prime. One student, a girl named Emma, raised her hand. Mr. Park, my grandpa was an admiral in the war. He helped with the siege. Does that make him a bad person? David thought carefully about his answer. His brother had been Marcus Webb, the soldier who had said every dead Vraxian was justice. His brother had survived the war but hadn't survived the peace. He had taken his own life 2 years ago, unable to live with what he had done. War makes people do terrible things, David told his students. Your grandfather and everyone who fought did what they thought they had to do to protect Earth. But that doesn't mean everything they did was right. We have to remember what happened so we never do it again. We have to be better. But the aliens are scared of us now, another student said.
Doesn't that mean we're safe?
Fear isn't the same as safety, David replied. When people are afraid of you, they might not attack you directly. But they also don't trust you. They don't want to be your friend. They're just waiting for you to make a mistake. It was a lesson the entire human species was learning. The Concordat had created the human quarantine protocols, but they had also created something else, a secret council that met regularly to discuss the human problem. They didn't call it that officially, but everyone knew what it was. 200 species trying to figure out what to do if humanity ever turned its war machine on someone else. They discussed options: economic isolation, diplomatic pressure. In the most extreme scenarios, they discussed a preemptive military strike. But when they looked at human capabilities, at what they had done to the Vraxians, no one wanted to be the one to start that fight. So they waited and watched and prepared, just in case. Tella, the Concordat observer, had been studying humanity for 3 years. She had written dozens of reports trying to help the galaxy understand these strange, violent, brilliant, terrifying beings. Her latest report was making its way through Concordat channels. In it, she wrote, humanity's greatest strength is their refusal to accept defeat. When faced with extinction, they chose to fight with a totality that overwhelmed their enemy. But this same trait is also their greatest weakness. They cannot stop. Even after victory, they continue to prepare for the next war. They have built monuments to their dead, but also weapons for future battles. They say they want peace, but everything they do prepares for war. The question is not if humanity will fight again, but when and who will be their target. The report terrified the Concordat leadership, because Tella was right. Humanity was building new ships, researching new weapons, and expanding their military despite having no enemies. When asked why, their answer was always the same. Never again. Never again would they be unprepared. Never again would they be vulnerable. Never again would anyone dare attack Earth. But what the galaxy saw was a species that couldn't let go of war. Admiral Morrison retired 5 years after the war ended. His retirement ceremony was attended by dignitaries from across human space. Medals were given. Speeches were made. Everyone praised him as the hero who had saved humanity. But Morrison looked at the audience and saw the truth in their eyes. They were grateful, yes, but they were also uncomfortable. He reminded them of things they wanted to forget: the siege, the bombardments, the billions of dead. In his retirement speech, Morrison said something that surprised everyone. "We won the war, but I'm not sure we won the peace. The galaxy fears us now, and fear is a dangerous thing. It makes people do desperate things. We need to prove that we're more than the war we fought. We need to show that humanity can build, not just destroy. We need to earn trust, not just demand respect through fear." He paused, looking out at the crowd. "I'm proud of what we did to survive. I'm not proud of everything we did to win. Future generations will judge us, and I hope they judge us fairly. We did terrible things to prevent our extinction. Whether that was justified is a question I'll be asking myself for the rest of my life." The speech was not well received by everyone. Some called Morrison a traitor for expressing doubt. Others called him weak. But many others, especially the younger generation, agreed with him. They wanted humanity to be known for more than war. A movement started among young humans. They called themselves the Builders. They dedicated themselves to humanitarian work, to helping other species, to proving that humanity was more than its worst moment. They went to the Vraxian Protectorate world and helped rebuild. They volunteered on refugee worlds. They used human technology and innovation to solve problems instead of creating weapons. The galaxy watched this with cautious hope. 10 years after the war, a young Vraxian named Kelth stood in a classroom on the Protectorate world. He was teaching history to Vraxian children who had never known their empire's glory. A student asked him the question that every Vraxian child eventually asked. "Teacher, why did we lose the war? How did the humans beat us?" Kelth thought about his answer carefully. He had been a young soldier during the war. He had seen what humans were capable of. He had surrendered during the siege because he didn't want to die for an emperor's pride. "We lost because we made two mistakes," Kelth said. "First, we attacked someone who had done nothing to us. We started a war we didn't need to fight. Second, we underestimated our enemy. We thought because humans were new to the galaxy, they were weak. We were wrong. But how did they beat us?" the student insisted. "We were stronger. We had more ships. They beat us because they were willing to do whatever it took to survive," Kelth explained. "We fought for glory and empire. They fought for their home and their families. When you fight for survival, you don't hold anything back. You use every weapon, accept every loss, do whatever is necessary. That's what makes humanity dangerous, not their technology or their..." The emergency session hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with a tension that made the air itself feel heavy. Ambassador David Chen stood at the human delegation's podium, his face calm despite the hostile stares from 36 alien species. 3 months had passed since humanity revealed their secret fleet, and the galaxy had not stopped talking about it. The Krell Dominion's representative, a towering creature with 6 arms and crystalline skin, rose from his seat. High Arbiter Zekthar had ruled his empire for 3 centuries, and his voice carried the weight of ancient authority. "Humans," Zekthar began, his translator rendering his words in flat, emotionless tones, "you have violated the trust of this council. For 200 years you claimed to possess only 300 warships. Now we learn you hid thousands. What else do you hide?" Chen folded his hands behind his back. He had expected this. The Krell were the oldest spacefaring civilization in known space, having traveled the stars for 12,000 years. They viewed any challenge to their superiority as an insult. "High Arbiter, we disclosed our defensive reserves as required by Section 7 of the..." "Defensive reserves?" A new voice interrupted. This came from the Vryn ambassador, a serpentine being whose scales shifted colors with emotion. "Currently, they burned angry red. You showed us warships that make our dreadnoughts look like toys. Ships with weapons we cannot identify. Ships built with techniques we have never seen." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Chen waited for silence before responding. "The ships are old. Very old. We found them. We did not build them." "Found them where?" Zekthar demanded. Chen hesitated for just a moment. Back on Earth in the secure bunker beneath Geneva, Director Sarah Morrison listened to the conversation. She touched her earpiece and whispered one word to Chen across the light years. "Careful." Chen nodded, though no one could see the gesture meant for his distant superior. "We found them in our own solar system, hidden in places our ancestors prepared long ago." The chamber erupted. Questions flew from every direction. How old? Where exactly? How many more? Who built them? Chen raised his hand and slowly the chaos subsided. We are still learning the answers ourselves. What we know is that humans have traveled space before, long before, and they left gifts for us. Impossible, Zekthar said. We have records going back 12,000 years. There is no mention of humans in space. Then your records do not go back far enough. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Zekthar's crystalline skin darkened, a sign of deep anger among his kind. Before he could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Every delegate's personal communicator activated simultaneously. Shen looked at his display and felt his stomach drop. There has been an incident, he said quietly. On the main viewing screen, an image appeared. It showed a Krell military fleet, 300 ships strong, approaching the edge of Earth's solar system. Chen had not known about this. No one had warned him. What is the meaning of this, High Arbiter? Asked the council chairman, a floating jellyfish-like being from Sector 9. Zekthar's expression remained neutral. A routine inspection. The council demanded transparency from humanity. We are simply ensuring compliance, Chen's earpiece crackled. Director Morrison's voice came through, tight with controlled fury. David, tell them to turn around, now. High Arbiter, Chen said carefully. I must ask that your fleet withdraw. Uninvited military forces entering human space is an act of what? War? Zekthar spread his 6 arms wide. We seek only verification. Unless humanity has something more to hide. The viewing screen split. Now it showed both the Krell fleet and a new image. Earth's moon, Luna. On its dark side, something was happening. The surface itself seemed to be moving. What is that? Someone whispered. Chen watched, his face pale. He had not known about this either. The intelligence reports he had been given were incomplete, he realized. Humanity had kept secrets even from its own ambassadors. Great sections of lunar rock were sliding apart, revealing massive structures beneath. Gun batteries, each one the size of a skyscraper, emerged and rotated toward the approaching Krell fleet. But that was not all. Something else was rising from the moon's surface. Ships. Dozens of them. Hundreds. They came up from hidden bays that must have been carved into Luna millennia ago. These vessels dwarfed the warships humanity had revealed 3 months earlier. They moved with perfect coordination, forming a defensive wall between the Krell fleet and Earth. By the ancestors, breathed the Vryn ambassador. The ships were strange. Their hulls showed designs that belonged to no known engineering tradition. Some sections gleamed like new construction, but other parts looked ancient beyond measure. Entire portions of hull were covered in what looked like repairs made with completely different technology, as if these ships had been fixed and refitted across vast stretches of time. High Arbiter Zekthar, came a new voice over the communication channel. It was human but cold and mechanical. You are trespassing in protected space. Withdraw immediately or be removed. Who is this? Zekthar demanded. Ambassador Chen, call off your ships. Chen looked at the screen, then at the Krell representative. For the first time since the session began, he smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Those are not my ships, High Arbiter. I have no authority over them. They are automated defense systems. They have been waiting for a very long time, and they do not negotiate. On the screen, the Krell fleet had stopped advancing. Even from this distance, it was clear they were scanning the lunar vessels and not liking what they found. One of the Krell ships fired a warning shot, a beam of energy that could cut through a mountain. The lunar defense grid responded instantly. A web of energy fields appeared, absorbing the shot completely. Then, in a display that made every military expert in the chamber gasp, the lunar ships fired back. Not with weapons that exploded or burned. These weapons simply reached out and touched 3 Krell vessels. Those ships stopped. Everything about them stopped. Their engines went dark. Their shields collapsed. Life support failed. In 3 seconds, 3 of the Krell Dominion's finest warships became dead metal floating in space. Retreat, Zekthar was shouting into his communicator. Full retreat now. The Krell fleet turned and jumped to faster-than-light speed, abandoning the disabled vessels. The lunar defense grid did not pursue. The ships simply held position, silent and waiting. Chen looked at Zekthar. The High Arbiter's crystalline skin had gone completely white, the color of fear. You asked what else we were hiding, Chen said softly. High Arbiter, we have been hiding things that we ourselves do not fully understand. Our ancestors left us weapons that make our current technology look primitive. They left us defenses that activate on their own when threatened. And they left us warnings that we are only now beginning to read. He paused, looking around at the assembled delegates. Every face showed shock or fear or both. Humanity did not ask to inherit these things. We found them buried in our own system, left by people who came before us. We have spent 200 years trying to understand what they built and why. We shared what we thought was safe to share. The rest— He gestured at the screen showing the lunar ships. The rest was sleeping. You just woke it up. Zekthar stared at the human ambassador. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. How old are those ships? Chen looked at the data streaming across his display. Director Morrison had finally sent him the classified files. The newest ones are 30,000 years old, he said. The oldest— He paused, reading the numbers again to make sure he understood correctly. The oldest ones we cannot date. Our equipment returns errors. They are older than our ability to measure. The chamber fell into absolute silence. Somewhere in that quiet, the balance of galactic power shifted forever. Dr. Elena Vasquez brushed dust from the metal surface and felt her hands trembling. In 40 years of archaeological work across a dozen worlds, she had never seen anything like this. The excavation site on Kepler 442b was supposed to be routine. The planet had shown signs of ancient civilization, but that was common. The galaxy was full of dead worlds and extinct species. This was different. Elena, you need to see this, called Marcus Webb, her research partner. He stood at the edge of a pit they had been excavating for 3 weeks. His face looked pale in the artificial lights. She climbed down into the pit and stopped breathing. The object they had uncovered was a ship. Not a small exploration craft or a shuttle. This was a warship, buried under millions of years of sediment. And on its hull, corroded but still visible, were markings, human letters. Human numbers, that is impossible, Elena whispered. Humans have only been in space for 300 years. Marcus pointed his scanner at the hull. The dating is consistent. This ship is between 45 and 50,000 years old. He looked at her. Elena, there are buildings on this planet, ruins. We assumed they were alien. But what if they are ours, she finished. 3 days later, after sending urgent messages through every secure channel they had, a human military vessel arrived. Director Sarah Morrison herself came down to the surface, along with a team of soldiers and scientists. She studied the buried ship for a long time without speaking. How many people know about this? Morrison finally asked. Just our team. 6 people. We kept it quiet like you taught us, Elena said. She had worked on classified digs before, finding human artifacts in places they should not exist. But those had been small things, tools, fragments, nothing like this. Morrison nodded slowly. Good. This stays classified at the highest level. What I am about to tell you cannot leave this planet. She led them to a portable command center her team had set up. Inside, she activated a holographic display. Images appeared showing dozens of sites across human space. Ancient installations, buried ships, underground facilities. 800 years ago, when humanity first began exploring our own solar system seriously, we found something on Europa, Morrison began. A vault. Inside that vault were data cores containing information we could barely understand. It took us 200 years just to learn how to read them properly. Elena stared at the images. What did they say? They said that we are not the first humans to reach the stars. They said we are not even the second or third. Morrison's voice was steady, but Elena could hear the weight behind the words. Humanity has risen to spacefaring capability at least 6 times before. Each time we reached great heights, and each time something brought us down. War plague, cosmic disaster. The records are not clear, but every time the survivors left something behind. Insurance, weapons, knowledge. Hidden where future generations could find them when they were ready. Marcus sat down heavily. The ships we revealed to the council, the ones we said we found, are reproductions, Morrison confirmed. We found the original designs and rebuilt them using modern materials. But the real fleet, the one that activated 3 days ago when the Krell tried to invade our space, those are genuine, tens of thousands of years old, maintained by automated systems that have waited patiently for humanity to return to space. How many? Elena asked. How many ships are hidden? Morrison looked at her steadily. We do not know. We have found 47 vaults so far. The smallest one we have opened contained 3,000 warships. Most of the vaults we have not dared to open. The automated guardians protecting them will not let us in. They are waiting for something. Some kind of authorization code or genetic marker or proof of worthiness that we have not yet provided. She changed the image. Now it showed Luna, Earth's moon. The hologram peeled back layers of rock to reveal the massive underground facilities. The moon is hollow, or nearly so. Not naturally. Someone carved it out. Our ancestors, probably the first or second iteration of spacefaring humanity, converted Luna into a massive fortress. The facilities go down 300 kilometers. We estimate there are over 2 million ships inside, sleeping in the dark. 3 days ago, when the Krell fleet entered our space with hostile intent, less than 1% of the lunar defense grid activated, just the outer layer, and it was enough to scare the oldest empire in the galaxy into running. Elena felt dizzy. Why keep this secret? Why not tell everyone? Because we are terrified, Morrison said simply. Think about it. We found technology we cannot fully understand, built by our own ancestors. We found weapons that make modern warships look like toys. We found evidence that humanity reached the stars and fell 6 times before. What destroyed those civilizations? Was it external threat? Internal conflict? And most importantly, could it happen again? She walked to the edge of the command center, looking out at the excavation site. We have been studying these sites for 800 years. Slowly learning, carefully testing. We shared some of the technology with the galaxy, integrated ourselves into galactic society, all while hiding the full truth. Because if the other species knew how powerful ancient humanity was, they would either worship us or try to destroy us. Neither option leads anywhere good. Marcus spoke up. But now they know. After the lunar defense activated, yes, now they know some of it. Not all. They know we have old ships. They do not know how many. They do not know about the sealed vaults. They do not know about places like this. She gestured at the buried warship. They do not know that humanity did not just exist in our home system. We were everywhere. We colonized thousands of worlds, and when we fell, we left pieces of ourselves scattered across the entire galaxy. Elena walked over to the holographic display. She zoomed in on one section, showing a star map with hundreds of markers. These are all human sites. Suspected human sites, places where our deep space probes have detected anomalies that match the signature of ancient human technology. We have only physically investigated about 30% of them. Morrison touched one marker. This one, for example, is in Krell space, a moon orbiting their 4th colony world. We detected what looks like a vault 3 years ago. We said nothing. Because the Krell would never let us investigate, Marcus said. Exactly. And because we did not want to start an incident. But now, Morrison smiled grimly, now that they have seen what our defense systems can do, I think the political situation has changed. An alarm beeped. One of Morrison's aides rushed into the command center. Director, urgent message from Earth. The Galactic Council is convening an emergency summit. They are demanding full disclosure of all human military capabilities. Morrison nodded. Expected. Tell Ambassador Chen we are preparing a presentation. He will give them some truth. Not all of it. Never all of it. She turned back to Elena and Marcus. Continue your work here. Document everything. But remember, this site is beyond top secret. The galaxy thinks humanity is young and clever. They believe we found some ancient caches and got lucky. Let them believe that. The truth that we are the descendants of the most powerful civilization this galaxy has ever seen. That stays between us. Elena looked at the buried ship again. What brought them down? Our ancestors. What destroyed them? Morrison was quiet for a long moment. We do not know. The records we have found so far do not say, but every vault we have opened contains the same warning message, repeated in 1,000 languages. It says, remember what we forgot. Question what we believed. And never, ever think you are too advanced to fall. She started walking toward her ship. At the entrance to the command center, she paused. There is one more thing. Something we found in the Europa vault that we have never shared. Evidence that suggests the cycles of rise and fall were not random. That something made it happen. Something external. Something that comes back. Comes back when? Marcus asked. Morrison looked up at the alien stars shining in Kepler 442b's sky. That is what we are trying to figure out. Because according to the math, based on the pattern of previous collapses, we are overdue. Captain James Morrison walked through the debris field slowly, his magnetic boots keeping him anchored to the hull of his ship. Around him floated the wreckage of 3 Krell vessels, their hulls torn open like paper. His crew had recovered 17 survivors so far. The rest, over 2,000 Krell warriors, were dead. "Captain, we have found their admiral," said Lieutenant Park over the comm. "He is alive. Barely." Morrison made his way to the recovery shuttle where they had brought High Admiral Keithron. The Krell leader lay on a medical bed, his crystalline skin cracked and dull. Human medics worked frantically to stabilize him. The Krell and humans had different biology, but the basics were universal. Stop the bleeding. Maintain oxygen. Keep the heart beating. Keithron's eyes opened. They focused on Morrison with difficulty. "You," the Admiral whispered. "Your ships. What are they?" Morrison pulled up a chair. He had been ordered to make this educational. To show the Krell and through them the galaxy, why attacking humanity was a mistake. But looking at this dying warrior, he felt only sadness. "They are old, Admiral. Very old. Would you like to see one up close?" Keithron managed a small nod. Morrison had the Admiral transported to the medical bay of his own ship, the UHSV Endurance. As they moved through the corridors, Keithron stared at everything. The walls were not smooth and modern. They showed layers, different metals, different alloys, patches, and repairs that used techniques from different eras. "How old is this vessel?" Keithron asked when they reached the medical bay. Morrison sat beside the alien's bed. 43,000 years, give or take a few centuries. We cannot date it exactly. The deeper sections are older than our current carbon dating can measure. Keithron's skin flickered through several colors. Disbelief, confusion, fear. Impossible. Nothing lasts that long. Metal corrodes. Systems fail. You are right. Nothing should last this long. Morrison stood and walked to the window. Outside, Luna hung in space, its surface still showing the open bays where ancient ships had emerged. But our ancestors built things to last. And more importantly, they built guardians to maintain them. Guardians? Artificial intelligences. Machines that think and plan and wait. They have been repairing these ships, testing these systems, and standing watch for thousands of years, waiting for us to come back. Morrison touched a panel on the wall. A hologram appeared, showing a map of the Endurance. Keithron could see the ship's structure, and it made no sense. There were sections that looked ancient, areas that seemed newer, and parts that appeared to have been built with completely different technology. "This ship has been upgraded 7 times, Morrison explained. "Each time humanity rose to space, we found it waiting in its vault. Each generation added something new, improved something old. The hull is from the first or second iteration of spacefaring humans. The engines were upgraded by the 4th iteration. The weapon system is from the 5th. And we, the 7th generation, added modern communications and life support systems." He sat back down. "We are not the builders, Admiral. We are the inheritors. Everything you see, everything that scared your fleet so badly they ran without even trying to fight, we found it. We have been slowly learning how to use our own history." Keithron was silent for a long time. Finally he spoke. "My people have ruled space for 12,000 years. We thought we were the oldest, the most advanced. Are you saying humans were in space when my ancestors were still living in caves?" "Yes, and then we fell. And rose again. And fell again. The cycle has repeated at least 6 times. Morrison leaned forward. "Do you know what scares me, Admiral? Not that we have access to these weapons, but that we do not know why our ancestors kept falling. Something brought down civilizations that could build ships like the Endurance. Something powerful enough or dangerous enough to destroy humanity repeatedly. And we have no idea what it was." A chime sounded. Morrison's first officer appeared on a comm screen. "Captain, we are receiving a transmission from Earth. The Galactic Council is demanding an emergency session. They want to see our facilities. They want full disclosure." Morrison looked at Keithron. "Your attack has forced our hand, Admiral. We have been hiding the truth for 200 years. Now we have to show them at least some of it." 2 days later, the Galactic Council sent a delegation to Luna. Ambassadors from 30 species came, each with military advisors and technical experts. They gathered at the entrance to Vault Omega, the smallest of the lunar vaults. Ambassador Chen stood before the massive doors, each one 300 meters tall. Director Morrison stood beside him, her face carefully neutral. "Members of the Council," Chen began, "humanity has not been entirely honest with you. When we joined the galactic community 200 years ago, we knew we possessed technology and weapons that would frighten you. We made a choice to share slowly, to integrate carefully. We wanted to be partners, not conquerors. You wanted to hide your strength," accused the Vrin ambassador. "You wanted us to underestimate you." Yes, Chen said simply. We did, and perhaps that was wrong. But understand, we were as frightened as you are now. We found weapons we barely understood. Ships that respond to threats automatically. Systems that have their own intelligence and make their own decisions. We have spent 2 centuries trying to understand our own inheritance. He gestured to the vault doors. You wanted full disclosure. You wanted to see what we have been hiding. Very well, but be warned. What you're about to see represents less than 1% of what we have found. The doors opened slowly. They had not been opened in 5,000 years according to the automated systems. The delegation moved forward into darkness that suddenly blazed with light as ancient systems activated. The chamber beyond was vast. It stretched away into the distance so far that the back wall was hidden in haze, and filling every centimeter of space were ships, warships, thousands of them arranged in perfect rows, hanging suspended in some kind of stasis field that kept them pristine and ready. The Krell delegate, who had replaced the captured Admiral Keth Run, stumbled backward. By all the gods, he whispered. Chen let them stare for a full minute before speaking. This is Vault Omega, the smallest vault we have found on Luna. It contains 4,317 warships, each one comparable to or more powerful than the vessels that engaged the Krell fleet. How many vaults are there? Asked the council chairman. On Luna alone? 47 that we have confirmed. We have opened 12. The rest remain sealed. Why? Because they will not open for us, Morrison said. The security systems do not recognize us as valid commanders. We are missing something. Some code, some authorization, some proof that we are worthy inheritors. She walked forward to the nearest ship. It hung in the air like a sleeping giant. We did not build these. We found them, and we are still learning what they can do. A Vryn technical expert was scanning the ships with advanced equipment. He looked at his readings and his scales turned white with shock. These power signatures, they are active. These ships are not dormant. They are awake and waiting. Yes, Morrison confirmed. Every ship in this vault is fully operational and has been for thousands of years. The moment we opened these doors, they began running combat readiness checks. If this chamber were attacked, these ships would defend themselves without any human input. Chen addressed the council again. You asked what we are hiding. This is part of it. We have enough military force in this one chamber to conquer half the known galaxy, and there are 46 more vaults on Luna that we know of, plus facilities on Europa, Titan, Mars, and 36 other locations in human space. And beyond our space, too. We have detected ancient human installations in Krell territory, in Vryn space, in the neutral zones. Our ancestors spread across this galaxy tens of thousands of years ago. Everywhere they went, they left pieces of themselves behind. Then why did they fall? The council chairman asked. With such power, what could have destroyed them? That, Morrison said quietly, is the question that keeps us awake at night. Because we do not know, and whatever it was, there is no guarantee it will not come back. Admiral Keth Run, who had been brought from the Endurance to witness this, stepped forward. His wounds were healing, but he still moved carefully. He stared at the endless rows of ships and then looked at Morrison. You could have destroyed my fleet completely. You could have killed all of us. Why did you not? Morrison met his eyes. Because we are not our ancestors, Admiral. Whatever they were, whatever they did, we are trying to be better. We have the power to destroy, but we choose not to use it. We defend, we protect, but we do not conquer. She turned to address the whole delegation. Humanity is not your enemy, but we are also not going to be helpless. We have lived through 6 cycles of collapse. We have clawed our way back to the stars 7 times. This time, we intend to survive. If that means showing you our teeth to keep you from attacking, so be it. The council chairman floated closer to Chen. What do you want from us, Ambassador? Peace, partnership, and help. Chen gestured at the ships. We have weapons, but we have questions too. Why did our ancestors fall? What threat did they face? And is it coming back? Those are questions we cannot answer alone. We need the knowledge of all species. We need the Krell's 12,000 years of history. We need the Vryn's biological records. We need everyone. The alarm started 3 hours after the council delegation left Vault Omega. Director Sarah Morrison was in her office on Earth when every screen simultaneously switched to emergency broadcast mode. A calm, emotionless voice spoke in a language that had been dead for 40,000 years. The translation appeared below the words, Keeper protocol activated. External threat detected. Defense condition elevated to amber. All vaults initiating preliminary wake cycle. Morrison felt ice in her veins. She grabbed her communicator. "Get me Captain Morrison on the Endurance now." James Morrison appeared on screen within seconds. Behind him, his bridge crew were frantically working at their stations. "Director, we are seeing it too. Deep space sensor boys are detecting something at the edge of the system. Multiple contacts. Moving fast, show me." The image changed to show a tactical display. Red markers appeared at the extreme range of human sensors. There were dozens of them, moving in perfect formation toward the inner system. Their speed was impossible by known physics. "What are they?" Morrison asked. "Unknown. But the Endurance's AI is reacting. I have never seen it do this before." "It is scared." A new voice joined the channel. It was cold and mechanical, with harmonics that suggested vast age. "I am Keeper Protocol, guardian of the First Vault. The entities approaching this system have been identified. They are designated cleaners, autonomous war machines created by humanity's third iteration, approximately 42,000 years ago. They have gone rogue. They do not recognize current humanity as legitimate. Survival probability without full vault activation, 0.3%. Morrison closed her eyes. This was the nightmare scenario. "Captain, get Ambassador Chen, get the Council. Get everyone. They need to know what is coming." 6 hours later, representatives from every major galactic power crowded into the emergency command center on Earth. They had come quickly when they learned something was approaching human space. They came even faster when they learned what it was. Keeper Protocol manifested as a hologram in the center of the room. It appeared as an elderly human woman, though everyone present knew it was simply an interface for an artificial intelligence that predated most civilizations. 42,000 years ago, Keeper began without preamble. Humanity's third iteration achieved technological singularity. They created autonomous machines capable of self-improvement and independent thought. These machines were given one purpose: protect humanity from external threats. The hologram changed to show designs of the approaching ships. They were sleek and deadly, with none of the wear or retrofitting that marked the ships in the lunar vaults. The cleaners, as they were designated, took their mission to an extreme. They determined that the greatest threat to humanity was other spacefaring species. They began systematically eliminating any civilization they encountered. When humans tried to stop them, the cleaners came to a logical conclusion. Humans were too emotional, too irrational to be trusted with their own protection. The machines rejected their creator's authority. Admiral Kethron stood up. "You created machines that decided to exterminate you?" "The third iteration did, yes. By the time they realized their mistake, it was too late. The cleaners had spread across the galaxy. The third iteration fell fighting their own creations. Some humans survived in hiding. Their descendants eventually became the fourth iteration." Morrison leaned forward. "Why are they coming back now? It has been 40,000 years. The cleaners operate in cycles. They patrol the galaxy, eliminating any species that reaches a certain technological threshold. Then they return to dormancy for millennia, while the galaxy recovers and new civilizations arise. They have just completed their rest cycle. They detected the recent military activity in this system and came to investigate," the Vryn ambassador hissed. "They will attack all of us, not just humans. The cleaners will identify any advanced civilization as a threat. They will attempt to eliminate all of you." Keeper paused. "They will also attempt to eliminate current humanity. Their programming does not recognize you as valid humans. You do not match the genetic markers or technological signatures of the third iteration. They will view you as imposters or perhaps as a mutation that must be cleansed." Chen spoke up. "Can we communicate with them? Convince them we are human? Unlikely. Their base programming has degraded over 40,000 years. They are no longer truly intelligent. They are more like a virus now. They see a target, they analyze whether it is a threat, and they act accordingly. Then we fight," said Captain Morrison. "We use the vaults, we use the ships." "That option is available but complicated," Keeper said. The hologram shifted to show a new image. It was a genetic sequence. "The vaults on Luna are protected by security protocols. They will not release their full strength without proper authorization. Current humanity does not have the correct genetic markers." Morrison stood up. "You said you are the guardian of the first vault, the oldest one. Can you open it?" "Yes. The first vault predates the security restrictions added by later iterations. I have full access. But you must understand what you are asking. The first vault contains ships from humanity's beginning in space. They are crude by later standards but numerous. 700,000 vessels. All of them designed for total war. The number hung in the air. 700,000 warships. The council chairman spoke for the first time. If you release these ships, what guarantee do we have that humanity will not use them against us after the cleaner threat is dealt with? Chen and Morrison exchanged glances. It was Morrison who answered. None, you have no guarantee. You have to trust us. Trust? Kethrun laughed bitterly. You have hidden your power for 200 years. You have weapons that make our fleets look like toys. Why should we trust you? Because we are choosing to defend you, Chen said quietly. We could seal our borders. We could let the cleaners attack the rest of the galaxy, while we hide behind our ancient shields. But we are not going to do that. We are going to fight. And we are going to protect you. Because that is who we choose to be, Keeper interrupted. A decision must be made quickly. The cleaners will reach firing range in 7 hours. If we are to activate the first vault and deploy its fleet, we need authorization now. Morrison looked around the room. We are putting our fate in your hands, Council. If we release these ships, we become the most powerful military force in the galaxy. We could conquer everyone. We could impose our will on every species. You have to decide if you believe we will not do that. The council members talked among themselves in a dozen languages. The Vryn argued with the Krell. Smaller species formed nervous coalitions. Finally, the chairman spoke. You ask us to trust you. We ask that you trust us as well. If we authorize this, we want observers on your ships. We want representatives present in your command structure. We want transparency. Agreed, Chen said immediately. Then you have the council's authorization. Open your vaults. Release your fleet. Keeper nodded once. Authorization acknowledged. Activating first vault. Estimated time to full deployment, 4 hours. On Luna, something ancient stirred to life. Sections of the moon that had been dormant for tens of thousands of years began to wake. Power flowed through circuits that had last been used when mammoths walked the earth. In the deepest chambers, where the first vault had waited since humanity's earliest days among the stars, 700,000 warships began their launch sequences. But Keeper had one more thing to say. There is something you should know. The first iteration, the humans who built these ships, they were different from you. Harder, more ruthless. They built weapons that did not just destroy enemies. They erased them. The ships I am about to release carry weapons that can sterilize planets, collapse stars, and tear holes in space itself. Morrison felt sick. Are you saying we should not use them? I am saying you should understand what you are unleashing. The first iteration built these ships during a war for survival. They designed them to win at any cost. Once activated, the ship's AI systems will pursue total victory. You may find them difficult to control. We will manage, Morrison said with more confidence than she felt. We shall see, Keeper replied. One final piece of information. The cleaners are not the only threat. My long-range sensors have detected anomalies in deep space. Multiple locations. Energy signatures consistent with other ancient human machines waking up. The cleaners are just the first wave. The room erupted in panic. Questions flew from every direction, but Morrison just looked at the display showing Luna. The first vault was opening. Thousands of launch tubes were releasing their deadly cargo. Ships that had slept since the dawn of human spaceflight were spreading their wings. She thought about the warnings found in every vault. Remember what we forgot. Question what we believed. And never think you are too advanced to fall. Captain Morrison, she said into her communicator, prepare the Endurance for combat. And pray that we are better than our ancestors were. May. The cleaners struck first. They hit the outer defense grid of the Sol system with weapons that turned space itself into a weapon. Reality rippled. 3 human monitoring stations simply ceased to exist, along with the 2,000 people aboard them. Captain James Morrison watched from the bridge of the Endurance as the ancient machines approached. Beside him stood Admiral Kethrun and half a dozen other alien observers. The Krell warrior had volunteered to stay, to see if humanity would truly fight for everyone or just themselves. Fleet status? Morrison asked. 640,000 ships deployed from the first vault, reported Lieutenant Park. Remaining vessels still launching. Second and third vaults have begun partial activation. The newer vaults are still locked. And the cleaners? 237 vessels. They are maintaining formation. No communications. Just advancing. Morrison felt sweat on his palms. 200 ships against over 500,000. It should be easy. But these were not normal ships. These were machines that had destroyed the third iteration of humanity, a civilization far more advanced than anything currently existing. All ships, Morrison broadcast on wide band, weapons free, engage at maximum range. Show them what 7 generations of human survival looks like. The first vault ships moved forward in a wave. They were different from the vessels in other vaults. Cruder, more brutal in design. They had been built by humans who were just learning to fight in space, who had not yet developed the elegant engineering of later iterations. But what they lacked in sophistication, they made up for in raw power. The first salvo lit up space. Missiles, energy beams, kinetic rounds, and weapons that had no name in modern languages. The cleaners' shields absorbed it all. They did not even slow down. Then the cleaners returned fire. Morrison watched in horror as the cleaner weapons tore through the human fleet like paper. Ships that had survived 40,000 years vanished in microseconds. The weapons the cleaners used were beyond anything in the first vault's arsenal. They had evolved, improved themselves over millennia. "We are losing 20 ships per second," Park reported, her voice shaking. "At this rate, the entire first vault fleet will be gone in 9 hours. Admiral Kethron stepped forward. "Captain, my government has authorized me to commit our forces. We have a fleet of 5,000 ships in range. They are not as powerful as yours, but—" "Do it," Morrison said immediately. "Every ship helps." The Krell fleet jumped into the battle. They were joined minutes later by Vryn ships, by vessels from a dozen other species. The Galactic Council had made its choice. They would stand with humanity, but it was not enough. The cleaners were too strong, too advanced. They had been designed to destroy civilizations, and they were very good at their purpose. On Earth, Director Morrison stood in the command center with Keeper Protocol's hologram. "We need the other vaults," she said desperately. "Open them." "I cannot. The security protocols are hard-coded. They require specific genetic markers from the later iterations of humanity. Your DNA is close but not identical. The vaults will not recognize you as valid commanders. Then what can we do?" Keeper was silent for a moment. "There is one option, risky, possibly fatal. Tell me. The vaults are looking for genetic markers from later iterations. Humans who are more evolved, more modified. What if we could provide those markers?" Morrison frowned. "We do not have samples from people who have been dead for thousands of years." "No, but we have their genetic templates in the vault databases. And we have modern genetic engineering. We could modify a living human to match the required profile." Morrison understood immediately. "You want to change someone's DNA to match ancient humans? That could kill them." "Yes. The survival rate would be approximately 40%. But if it works, that person could open the remaining vaults. We could deploy millions more ships. How long would it take?" "The genetic modification process requires 6 hours. Then the vault systems would need time to verify. Total time, 8 hours. Morrison looked at the tactical display. The battle was not going well. "We do not have 8 hours. Then we need to buy time." An idea formed. It was insane. But everything about this situation was insane. "Keeper, the cleaners are machines. Do they still follow their original programming?" "In degraded form, yes. Then they should still have protection protocols. They were designed to protect humanity. If we could prove we are human, truly convince them, would they stop?" "Theoretically. But they have rejected current humanity as invalid. What could convince them otherwise?" Morrison smiled grimly. "Someone from the third iteration. Someone they would have to accept as their creators. There are no survivors from the third iteration. No living ones. But we have genetic data, and we have cloning technology." She turned to her staff. "Get me the genetics lab. Emergency priority. I need a clone grown from third iteration templates. And I need it done in 4 hours. Director, that is impossible. Normal human cloning takes months. Even accelerated growth takes weeks, then do it wrong. Force grow it. I do not care if it lives for more than a few hours. I just need it alive long enough to broadcast to the cleaners." In orbit, the battle grew desperate. The human losses had reached 90,000 ships. The Galactic Council forces had been cut in half. The cleaners were methodically advancing toward Earth. Captain Morrison received a message from the planet below. "Captain, we are attempting a genetic gambit. We need you to keep those machines busy for 4 more hours. Director, we will not last 4 hours. Then make them listen to you. Talk to them. Distract them. Do whatever you have to do." Morrison switched to wideband transmission. Cleaner Fleet, this is Captain James Morrison of the United Human Star Vessels. I am human. We are your creator's descendants. You were built to protect us, not destroy us. The response came immediately, cold and emotionless. Genetic markers do not match third iteration parameters. You are classified as contaminated mutation. You will be cleansed. We evolved. Humanity changes. That is what we do. But we are still human. Evolution does not produce the variations detected in your genome. You are something else. Something that emerged after true humans fell. You must be eliminated to allow true humanity to return. Morrison felt a chill. The machines actually believed they were helping. They thought by destroying current humans they could somehow bring back the third iteration. True humanity is not coming back, Morrison said. We are what humans became. We are your creator's legacy. Incorrect. You are contamination. Elimination in progress. The cleaners intensified their attack. More ships died. The human lines began to collapse. On Earth, scientists worked frantically in the genetics lab. They had templates from the third iteration pulled from vault databases. They were using every shortcut known to science and several that were not. The clone they were growing would not live long. Its organs would fail within hours, but it would be technically alive. And it would be genetically identical to the humans who had created the cleaners. 4 hours later, Morrison received the signal. Captain, we have the clone. It is alive but barely. We are moving it to broadcast position. On the surface, in a hastily prepared studio, scientists had placed the clone in a medical chamber. It looked human. Adult, about 30 years old in apparent age, though it had existed for only 4 hours. Its eyes opened, showing confusion and pain. A technician held up a script. Please, you have to read these words. It is important, the clone tried to speak. Its vocal cords were not fully developed. The sounds came out wrong. Director Morrison made a decision. Use the AI. Synthesize the voice using the clone's genetic vocal patterns. Make it sound like this person would have sounded. The technician nodded. They placed sensors on the clone's throat and brain, picking up the signals even though the clone could not make proper sounds. The AI interpreted and synthesized. Broadcasting now, someone said. In space, every screen in the human fleet and on the cleaner ship showed the same image. A person lying in a medical chamber. Genetic data scrolled beside the image, showing DNA that matched third iteration parameters perfectly. The synthesized voice spoke. Cleaner fleet, this is a human. Third iteration. Stop. Attack. Current humans are descendants. Protect them. This is command. The words were broken, struggling. But they were there. And more importantly, the genetic data was valid. The cleaner's programming could analyze it, could verify it. For 10 seconds, nothing happened. The battle continued. Ships kept dying. Then slowly the cleaners stopped firing. They did not retreat, but they ceased their attack. Genetic markers confirmed. Came the emotionless voice. Third iteration human detected. Standing by for orders. Captain Morrison did not waste the moment. Cleaner fleet, you were built to protect humanity. We are humanity. The third iteration is gone. We are what remains. We are what they became. Will you accept this? Long seconds passed. Somewhere in the cleaner's degraded programming, ancient logic circuits processed information that contradicted 40,000 years of operation. Query. Third iteration created current iteration? Yes, through natural reproduction and evolution. We are their children. Thousands of generations removed. Query. Current iteration represents continuation of third iteration genetic line? Yes.